In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 NHL games happening on March 5th, 2026, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 10 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 5 NHL games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start. If you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Buffalo Sabres versus Pittsburgh Penguins. Buffalo walks into this matchup with that loose, confident feel that only comes when a team has been stacking good nights on top of each other and everyone in the locker room can sense it. Pucks are bouncing for them, their transition game looks lighter, and you can almost picture the bench, guys grinning a little more between shifts because winning does that. On the surface, it screams, just roll with the hot team, and a lot of casual bettors stop right there, circling the name that has the recent buzz and moving on. The other side of the ice tells a different kind of story. Pittsburgh has that steady, structured vibe that comes from a group that has been forced to tighten up, lean into details, and figure out how to win without the training wheels of pure star power carrying every single night. The system looks more honest, the gaps between forwards and defense are smaller, and instead of chasing track meets, they seem much more comfortable dragging games into something that feels like a long chess match instead of a sprint. Home ice only adds to it, because that building feeds off patient pressure, not just wild rushes. An arrested home team against a road group that has already burned a lot of energy recently is usually the side that dictates pace, matchups, and the emotional rhythm of the night. There is also that subtle psychological edge that comes when a team has already absorbed some adversity and turned it into identity, the kind of we know who we are now feeling that makes a club more trustworthy in games that can tilt in small moments rather than giant momentum swings. Buffalo may arrive with momentum, but Pittsburgh looks more like the team built to manage the grind of a full 60 minutes, to win those boring little sequences along the wall, and to close out a tight game in front of their own crowd when it matters most. As our first pick for this matchup, the Pittsburgh Penguins money line is our full game side pick. Both teams have enough skill to put up crooked numbers if things open up, but everything about the current shape of these groups points toward caution, patience, and a lot of respect for what the opponent can do if you give them odd man rushes all night. Coaches in spots like this tend to lean into simpler breakouts, safer pinches, and shorter shifts, the kind of little adjustments that do not show up on the highlight reel but quietly shave scoring chances off the total. Fatigue on the road usually does not kill offense in a dramatic way, it just nudges players toward safer decisions, fewer ambitious stretch passes, and a bit less jumping into the rush from the back end. That tends to create more shots from the outside, more dump-ins, and more time spent grinding in the corners instead of trading tap-in chances in front. On the other side, a confident home group that trusts its structure is often very happy to keep everything in front of them, protect the slot, and wait for the road team to force something that is not really there. Games with that kind of blueprint usually feel tight on the bench and in the stands, where every goal feels heavy and every post or glove save gets that extra gas from the crowd. The rhythm becomes slower, more deliberate, almost like playoff hockey in miniature, and those are the nights where big totals start to look a little too ambitious once the puck actually drops and you see how both teams are approaching each shift. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Florida Panthers versus Columbus Blue Jackets. If you are hunting for a spot to push back against the champs, this matchup pretty much puts a neon sign over it. Florida comes into Columbus with the shine of back-to-back titles from 2024 and 2025 still on the banner, but right now the hockey is not matching the hardware. They sit in the lower half of their division, hanging around that 8th spot with a record in the 30-win, 28-loss, 3-overtime loss neighborhood, and the recent form has been rough, with a losing streak and a stretch where wins have been rare and frustrating. Their play at 5-on-5 looks more like flip-a-coin hockey than a powerhouse. The goals scored and goals allowed are almost balanced, and the save percentage sitting under .875 tells you every mistake feels like it ends up in the net. It is the kind of profile where one bad shift, one bad pinch, and suddenly the whole night feels like chasing the game instead of controlling it. Columbus, on the other hand, has turned Nationwide Arena into a pretty lively problem for visiting teams. Their overall mark lands around 31 wins, 21 losses, and 8 overtime losses, and at home they sit in that strong 16-win, 8-loss, 5 overtime loss range, which is where confidence starts to feel real and not just like a talking point. Over the last 10, they have been on a heater, something like 8 wins, 1 loss, 1 overtime loss, and averaging more than 4 goals a night in that stretch, which is not subtle at all. The style is exactly what coaches like to call simple, but simple here means they come in waves. They fire a lot of pucks, they sit near the top of the league in shot volume, they keep shots against under decent control, and they are perfectly happy to force you to answer shift after shift until somebody breaks. On special teams, when they get a power play goal, their record turns strongly positive, and that matters even more against a Florida group that spends plenty of time in the box, sitting near the top of the league in penalty minutes. You do not need a spreadsheet to see how that story can go for a road team that already feels like it is under pressure. Florida also has that extra layer of noise that does not show up in a box score, but you feel it when you watch them. Longer-term injuries to important forwards and defensemen, including a top-line center shutdown with a knee issue, have stretched their depth and forced role changes that are not always comfortable. Several depth pieces still sit on injured reserve, and that means more patchwork lines, more emergency chemistry, and more nights where the coach is trying to find combinations on the fly. They brought in a veteran goalie on a late two-way deal just to steady the crease, and trade chatter around their higher-paid starter as the deadline approaches has been swirling in the background. That kind of stuff does not guarantee losses, but it does make a team feel like it is juggling while skating, which is not ideal against an opponent that actually knows what it wants to be. Columbus does not have that identity crisis. They are not pretending to be something else. They play with pace, they lean into shot volume, they use their crowd, and they seem comfortable in the fact that games in that building can turn into long nights for visiting defensemen. Nationwide has been full for years, and the cannon going off after a home goal is not just a quirky arena thing, it is a reminder that the energy in that building spikes every time the puck goes in. When the betting market looks at all that and nudges the home side into the small favorite zone instead of leaving them as big underdogs, it is a hint that sentiment is shifting toward the Jackets' reality rather than Florida's reputation. One group is healthier, faster, and trending upward in front of its own fans. The other is dinged up, taking penalties, and trying to play through a stretch that feels more like damage control. Hockey will always have weird bounces, hot goalies, and random deflections that wreck tickets. But if you are trying to decide who deserves that money line nod in this particular matchup, the trail of evidence keeps pointing back to the home team in blue. As our first pick for this matchup, the Columbus Blue Jackets money line is our full game side pick. These two already served up a wild one this season, a 13-goal thriller that finished 7-6 in overtime, the kind of game that feels like pond hockey dressed up in NHL sweaters. That kind of script is not normal, sure, but it tells you something about how these teams collide. Columbus does not pretend to be a suffocating, low-event outfit. They put nearly 30 shots on net a night, they give up close to the same number, and they live in that upper tier of the league when it comes to total shot volume. They have already piled up well over 180 goals, and their scoring rate sits slightly above 3 per game, so they are not shy about trading chances. It is almost like they are comfortable in a race rather than a chess match, which can be fun for fans and terrible for anyone who needs a quiet under. Florida brings its own gasoline to that fire. Their game leans hard into aggression and physical play, and that style comes with a cost, a lot of time in the penalty box. They rank near the top in penalty minutes per game, they draw plenty of calls the other way, and they have already had to kill off more than 200 penalties. That is a recipe for power play after power play, and that usually means more goals one way or the other, especially with a Columbus penalty kill that sits under 80% and a Columbus power play that clicks above 20%. Throw in Florida's shaky save numbers, and you suddenly have a script where long stretches at 5-on-4 or 4-on-3 feel like they are just waiting for a shot to find a seam. Over the last 10 games, Columbus has been averaging more than 4.2 goals scored and around 2.6 allowed, while Florida has been giving up roughly 3.6 against, which paints a picture of scores creeping higher rather than shrinking. There is also the human side of scoring that statistics only hint at. A defending champion fighting around the playoff bubble tends to lean into urgency, and urgency often shows up as extra bodies joining the rush, defensemen pinching a little harder, and a willingness to gamble instead of sitting back. A confident home team that has been filling the net usually does not pull its foot off the pedal just to protect a modest lead. Neither of these groups looks built to sit on a 2-1 score for 60 minutes, and you can almost feel that from the way they approach neutral zone pressure and line changes. Sure, goalies can steal a night and posts can be cruel, but more often than not, this is the type of matchup where someone getting to 3 goals still does not feel safe. It is much easier to imagine a race to 4 or 5, with both benches trading momentum swings and special teams chances, than a tight, suffocating chess match with long stretches of nothing happening. So if you are trying to decide which side of the total fits the way these teams actually play right now, it makes a lot more sense to lean toward a game where the red light gets plenty of work. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Utah Mammoth versus Philadelphia Flyers. We have a brand new team with a Mammoth-sized chip on its shoulder skating into one of the loudest rinks on the circuit, and the odd part is that the visitors are the ones carrying themselves like the grown-ups in the room lately. Utah has settled into the season with a record in the low 30s in wins, mid-20s in losses, and a small handful of overtime results, which tells you they are not just a novelty logo, they are actually stacking results. Philadelphia sits a little behind that pace with something closer to a high 20s to low 20s to low double-digit mix, which sounds close on paper, but the path to those numbers has felt a lot more chaotic and a lot more stressful for them. Utah usually looks a bit calmer in tight games. Their structure tends to hold up in those last 10 minutes, while the Flyers lean on emotion, home energy, and that classic one wild bounce and we are back style that can be exhausting when it does not show up. The first time these two met, we saw that crazy back-and-forth type of night that neutral fans beg for, ending in extra time with Utah sneaking out with the winner. But beneath that chaos, the same pattern was there. Utah kept its shape and slowly tilted the ice. That is the part that matters most when you are talking about which side is more likely to handle pressure over 60 minutes, because talent is one thing, but comfort in coin flip moments is where teams either print wins or donate them. Utah has spent most of the season dealing with road swings, different time zones, and hostile buildings, and they have turned a good chunk of those into tight wins, which is not normal behavior for a brand new franchise. It is the behavior of a group that already trusts its identity. Philadelphia has been feisty, no doubt, but they often land in those same one-goal games looking like they are hanging on by their fingernails rather than quietly steering the thing. Injuries only add to that feeling. The Flyers have had key pieces in and out, which forces line juggling and odd matchups, and even if everyone who is expected to dress does suit up, that wear and tear builds into the way a team plays late in a season. Utah, on the other hand, has enjoyed a more stable core, and that allows the coaching staff to lean on familiar combinations instead of improvising every other night. That kind of continuity is boring to talk about, but it is gold when the game is tied with 5 minutes left and no one wants to be the first one to blink. You can almost picture it already, Utah rolling its usual sets, Philadelphia trying to squeeze one more big home push out of tired legs, and the side that has been here more often lately quietly nudging ahead. There is also the simple confidence factor. A new team that has already proven it can walk into loud buildings and walk out with victories starts to believe that is just who it is. The Flyers, with their more uneven ride, know they can win these games, but they also know how quickly things have gone sideways on them this season. That tiny edge and belief does not show up in a box score, but you feel it in how clean the breakouts are, how sharp the line changes look, and how rarely the visitors panic if they fall behind early. When you put all that together, the traveling side simply profiles as the more trustworthy ticket to ride in this matchup. As our first pick for this matchup, the Utah Mammoth money line is our full game side pick. Utah and Philadelphia have both played a long stretch of games that keep landing in that same 5-goal neighborhood, just under the kind of fireworks people love to imagine. You see a pattern where there are occasional spikes with one higher scoring night here and there, but the bulk of their recent results keep sliding back into that restrained zone, like a rubber band snapping toward the middle. Part of that is pace. Neither team is in a huge rush to trade chance for chance, at least not for long periods. Utah can open up for short bursts when they smell weakness, but their default is a fairly tidy game, with shot totals that tend to stay in a moderate range rather than flying off the charts. Philadelphia, for all the talk about chaos, actually spends a lot of time grinding along the boards, slowing rushes down, and turning things into wrestling matches along the walls. That kind of hockey eats minutes and kills scoring as surely as a great goalie, because every battle in the corner is one less odd man rush going the other way. Special teams do not tilt this toward a scoring festival either. Neither side has a power play that terrifies the league, and both penalty kills are competent enough that you do not automatically pencil in a goal every time someone goes to the box. Instead, you get long stretches of 5-on-5 play, where both teams are comfortable staying patient and waiting for mistakes instead of forcing plays that are not there. For totals, that mindset matters just as much as raw talent, since patience usually means safer passes, fewer reckless pinches, and more shots that goalies can see from distance. The bigger picture context nudges this game even more toward a controlled script. We are getting deep enough into the season that every point feels heavier, so coaches tend to shorten the bench, lean on trusted veterans, and quietly remove the high-risk stuff that looks great in October but keeps coaches up at night in March. Players feel that too. You see fewer desperate cross-ice passes and more calm chips to center, fewer all-out gambles by defensemen, and more disciplined gap control. When both benches treat a night like this as a mini playoff test, the scoreboard usually reflects that caution with numbers that stay modest. So, while the first meeting gave us a glimpse of what this matchup looks like when it goes full chaos, the more likely outcome here is a version that keeps the intensity but trims the fireworks. Chances still come, quality looks still appear, but the flow leans toward a game where every goal feels huge precisely because there are not many of them. For a total, that kind of script has a very clear suggestion. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Boston Bruins versus Nashville Predators. Picture this matchup like two very different kinds of pressure cookers. On one side, you have Boston, a group that has been living right on the edge yet still keeps stacking points, sitting at 34-21-5 and coming off a gritty 2-1 grind against Pittsburgh that felt like one long stress test of their defensive shape and goaltending. If you have ever watched them nurse a one-goal lead on a random weeknight, you know that slightly tense, coffee at 11 p.m. type feeling. On the other side sits Nashville at 27-26-8, solid enough in their own building at 16-13-3, but carrying the weight of a 3-game skid and the sting of recent losses like 4-2 to Detroit and 3-2 to Columbus still echoing in the arena. That kind of mini slide does not just show up in the standings, it sneaks into the body language, the line changes, even how quiet or loud the building feels after a bad bounce. Books are treating this like almost a pure coin flip, giving the home side a small nod that has more to do with the building and the crowd than any clear gap in quality. On paper, though, these two resumes do not exactly read like twins. Boston is running a top third style attack, living around that 3.3 goals per game mark with a positive goal differential that shows their nights tilt more good than bad. Nashville, by contrast, is trying to swim upstream, scoring under 3 per game and sitting near the basement in goals against, with that goals allowed number hanging over them like a nagging notification you keep meaning to clear. The first meeting between these two already gave us a hint of the dynamic, Boston walking out of this same matchup with a 3-2 overtime win that showed they can handle the building, the noise, and the push. Recent form just keeps nudging in the same direction, with the Bruins sitting at 6-1-3 over their last 10 and the Predators at 3-3-4, which feels a lot like one team quietly trending up while the other tries to stop a wobble. Stylistically, Boston lives in that structured chaos lane, taking a lot of penalties, ranking near the top of the league in trips to the box, but somehow still coming out ahead over long stretches. That kind of profile usually belongs to teams that trust their system, their special teams, and their goaltending enough to survive the mess. Nashville, meanwhile, comes in needing an emotional response, which is real and matters, but a leaky defensive setup that has to open up against a deeper, more efficient attack can turn that adrenaline into blown coverages and odd man rushes if they are not careful. The same urgency that can spark a huge night for the home crowd can also create the exact kind of broken play environment that rewards the team that has been more dependable over the course of the season. So when you line up the resumes, the recent form, and the way these styles clash, the solid roadside ends up feeling like the more trustworthy ticket rather than the supposedly safer home favorite on the board. As our first pick for this matchup, the Boston Bruins money line is our full game side pick. The total number the books have hung for the combined scoring already tells you they are not expecting some sleepy 2-1 rock fight that everyone forgets by the next morning. They are bracing for actual offense, real swings, and a box score that needs more than one hand to count. Season scoring profiles line up with that expectation. Boston sits around 3.3 goals for per night and just under 3 against, a combination that makes their games feel busy even when the pace does not look wild on screen. Nashville hovers around 2.9 for and about 3.2 against, which is another way of saying their games often tilt towards something weird might happen, rather than low-event chess. You add those ranges together mentally, and the natural picture you get is not a quiet, conservative total. It is something more like a steady drumbeat of chances both ways. If you zoom in a bit, the recent stretch cranks the volume up even more. Over their last 10, Nashville games are living around 3.1 scored and 3.5 allowed, while Boston's are sitting near 3.6 scored and 2.9 allowed. Even if you do not do the exact math, that kind of environment screams goals happen here. More than nothing to see. Move along. A few key ingredients keep stirring the pot. Nashville's blue line has been one of the more generous units, giving up quality looks that turn into real chances, not just harmless perimeter shots. Boston piles up penalties, which is annoying for them, but for anyone looking at the scoreboard, it usually means more special teams time, more set plays off face-offs, and more chances for someone to rip one through a screen. There is also the game script factor that you can almost picture before puck drop. The home crowd wants energy, noise, and a response to that losing streak, so sitting back and playing safe, low-risk hockey is not exactly the natural move. If the game tilts early one way or the other, you can easily see long third-period stretches where one team is chasing, stretching shifts, activating defensemen, and eventually yanking the goalie for extra attackers. Those empty net scrambles, the wild 6-on-5 sequences, they are exactly the kind of late chaos that takes a total that is sitting on the fence and nudges it into the high side. So when you blend the season-long numbers, the recent trends, the shaky defense on one bench, the penalty-driven chaos from the other, and the emotional setup of a streaky home team trying to put on a show, the more natural expectation is a scoreboard that climbs rather than one that stays stuck in neutral. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. New York Islanders versus Los Angeles Kings. If you only stare at the betting screen, this matchup feels a bit upside down because the home side wears the favorite tag while the visitors quietly check more of the real hockey boxes. New York comes into Los Angeles as the group with the stronger body of work, steadier results over the season, and a road personality that actually seems to sharpen when they get away from home noise and distractions. They just had that long run of wind snap down the freeway in Anaheim, and it came in one of those strange nights where the score looked ugly, but the effort and shot volume did not really match the final numbers. That kind of loss on a West Coast trip is irritating for a team that prides itself on structure, and irritation tends to show up in the next game as sharper details, cleaner shifts, and fewer cute plays through the neutral zone. New York is built to live in low-margin territory on the road, the kind of outfit that is perfectly happy grinding through a one-goal game where the neutral zone is a traffic jam and every line change feels like a small chess move. Their style leans into patience, pucks chipped in the right places, and a calm belief that if they keep things organized in front of their own crease, their chances will eventually come. Across from them sits a Los Angeles team that has struggled to make its own building feel like an advantage, and that wears the look of a squad searching for rhythm more than setting the tone. The results at home have been spotty, the offense does not exactly punch in bunches, and the recent stretch of performances has raised more questions about consistency than answers about identity. On top of that, injuries and illness nibbling away at key contributors leave the Kings in that awkward space where they are still dangerous but not fully whole, and that often shows up in small ways like shorter pushes, hesitant entries, or special teams that never quite snap into sync. New York is not perfectly healthy either, but the absences on their side are already baked into how they have been playing, so what you see now is who they are, not a group still adjusting on the fly. They still carry a clear structure, a coaching plan that seems tailored for this back-to-back, and the comfort of knowing that the goaltending, especially with a rested starter in this leg, can erase a mistake or two without the whole night spiraling. When you line up a steadier road identity against a home team still trying to sort itself out, the path to which side is more likely to take care of business against the number starts to look pretty familiar, even if the market board tries to tell a different story. As our first pick for this matchup, the New York Islanders money line is our full game side pick. Both teams tend to live in that space where offensive numbers sit under the flashy tier, and you can see it in how often they are content to get pucks deep, win a board battle, and grind instead of forcing risky passes through the middle. The shot volumes usually land in a range that suggests control more than frenzy, which is great if you enjoy watching systems hockey and less great if you are hoping for a track meet. New York comes off a night where the scoreboard flashed loudly against them, and that kind of sting usually brings a very specific response, especially from a team that leans on structure. Coaches spend the next day circling clips where the gaps were too loose, sticks were half a second late, or forwards cheated for offense, and players tend to respond by tightening everything up, from shorter shifts to safer clears. That kind of reaction rarely leads to a wild, free-flowing follow-up. It usually produces a more patient, almost stubborn refusal to trade chances. On the other side, Los Angeles has been through a stretch where pucks have found their way into their net far more often than they would like, and that becomes a pride thing in a room pretty fast. When a team hears about goals against for a week, the next logical step is a reset game, the kind where defensemen simplify their first pass, wingers stay a little lower in the zone, and everyone is more willing to live with a chip out instead of a risky breakout. You can almost picture the message in the room: keep it simple, keep it in front, trust the goalie, and slowly squeeze the life out of the game. Special teams add another layer to this slow burn feel. The power plays here are not exactly juggernauts, and while both sides have their moments, they also have long stretches where the extra man looks more like extended possession than a constant barrage of grade A looks. Penalty kills can bend but not completely break, which often turns those 2 minutes into sequences of blocked shots, clears, and frustrated top units tapping their sticks on the way back to the bench. That kind of special teams profile rarely explodes into a parade of goals. It more often eats clock and keeps the scoreboard from flipping too fast. Goaltending sits at the center of this total picture. A rested New York starter stepping into the tougher leg of the trip brings a calm edge to their crease, and Los Angeles, even while managing health bumps, still has enough stability in net to keep games competitive when the skaters in front commit to details. With both benches likely leaning on that combination of pride, structure, and a desire to reset some recent scorelines, the script points toward a night where every goal feels like a small event, not part of a flood. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.